Matt Hancock's ghostwriter has released more than 100,000 WhatsApp messages from his time as Health Secretary during the pandemic. Now, among other revelations, the messages reveal that he rejected the Chief Medical Officer's advice to COVID test all residents going into English care homes. Political journalist Isabel Oakeshott has defended her decision to release the messages before the official inquiry, saying, quote, "We cannot wait any longer for answers." So do you think she was right to do that, Cole?
I don't think she was right to do it in that sense, because you know, when you have a ghostwriter for something, I've had one in the past, and you become so close to them because you're literally telling them your whole life. And you kind of build rapport with them and you really trust them. And I think when you're doing any kind of autobiography or telling your life, it has to be the whole truth, but sometimes that can be painful. And there's certain things you talk about then just as friends that you don't necessarily want to be in a book. And the thoughts of somebody listening to your whole story and then going and spreading it to everywhere else, stuff that, you know... It's a really difficult one because obviously we did need to know the truth. Somebody needs to tell the truth for once. But I just think I felt really uneasy that someone that you trust, because then in a world now where it's hard to trust people, isn't it? And it's just another example of who do you trust? Who can you tell anything to where they won't go to a newspaper or they won't sell it?
Do you think there's a bit of a difference, though, in terms of... Because I get what you're saying about, say, your situation, but if you're telling things about your own private life to somebody that you trust, that's one thing. But there's an argument here, surely, that it's in the national interest. You know, this is a very public issue, a pandemic, lives were lost.
I agree with that.
And I mean, I think in a way her argument is that it's a group WhatsApp messaging between Matt Hancock and lots of other people. And I believe, if I read between the lines here, that actually he's not tried to hide these WhatsApp messages in terms of they are with the inquiry, the judge who is leading this inquiry. But her argument is, I'm worried this inquiry is taking so long. You know, also it's a good story. Let's not forget that.
Yeah.
But her argument is, you know, France has done its investigation, Sweden's investigation is done and dusted. Everybody's doing them globally.
But is this the same person that also... She gave someone else's secrets away, didn't she?
Well, she did the book on David Cameron, the incident involving the pig's head moving swiftly on. Linda, what do you think?
Over 45,000 people died in care homes during the pandemic. And why was it just the people that had come from hospitals that were tested before then, and not people that came in from the community? I mean, it was a terrible time and nobody knew what was the right thing to do, did they, in those times? But I don't think she should have released all of this. I mean, because I've just written my autobiography and I've sat down with a lady called Beth and I've shared everything with her. And sometimes you forget that they're writing down and recording everything that you're saying. But I feel that I had to trust Beth with all of this. And now my kids have got involved in it because there's things in there they don't like. So out of 12 chapters, there's probably 2 chapters left. But I've been very honest in it. And I think we've got the right to hear what's happened during the pandemic. You know, it was up to... You know,
I mean,
I wanted you to write my book. You wouldn't write it, would you?
I wouldn't write it for that exact reason, because we're friends and I'm a journalist and I always think...
And you've been a ghostwriter.
And I've been a ghostwriter. And I think if you're going to do an honest book, yours was very honest, if you're going to do an honest book, you've got to put everything in there.
Which I did.
And if then all sorts of outside forces are going to get involved and say, well, I don't want that in there and I don't want that in there, you end up with a much sort of inferior product. And, I mean, I ghost wrote Sharon Osbourne's autobiography and I lived with her and Ozzy for a couple of weeks. It was the most fun fortnight of my life, by the way. Oh, it was just brilliant. But she and I, you know, she's been very open about it. She and I we got to a point where I submitted the manuscript and then a couple of members of her family were like, well, not Ozzy, but I don't want that in there and I don't want that in there. And we had a bit of an argument about it because I said, well, that's the truth. And you're either going to...
That's her truth.
But Jane... And, you know, Sharon, to her credit, went, yeah, you're right, and put it back in.
But Jane, this is my issue with it. I mean, Isabel saw these WhatsApp messages, but still went ahead with the book. It's still
You're talking
published.
about the pandemic diaries.
Yeah, pandemic
that she
diaries
goes through with
that
him.
she goes through.
Yeah.
Goes through. So these messages come up. You write the book, you complete it, you
And you get
edit
paid
it,
for writing
you get
it.
paid for it, and now all of a sudden you then want to have a change of heart and say, no, it's actually in the public interest to see these messages.
Well, again, I would argue from her point of view, just chipping in there, that I think she was thinking the inquiry will deal with this. And as time goes on, they've taken 18 months to even come to an agreement on the points of reference. The inquiry is so delayed, I think she's now thinking, are these ever going to come out? So I'm just going to put it out there.
Okay, fine, Jane. So it's you. You're a writer, and I'm talking here about principles, right? Because that's what we're talking about here. So you're in view of these messages, and you're writing the book. What would you do?
The first book?
As in the diaries that's just been released.
Basically, I think, from what I can say, she's written a piece today and she said, actually, Matt Hancock was very up for putting everything out there. But what happens, as you all know, is that when you say things that involve other people, that it had to go to the Cabinet Office.
Yeah.
And the Cabinet Office redacted about 300 things. So, there's a lot of mix going on in here.
If you'd written my book, would you put all the messages out there in the public domain?
No, because it's not in the public interest.
No.
Yeah.
It's not in the public...
I'm not that
interested. Your private life is not...
It's not. I tell everyone everything.
What you choose to put out there is up to you. But, but Matt Hancock obviously was a cabinet minister at a very trying time for the country. A spokesman for Matt Hancock has said the guidance only mandated testing for people entering care homes from hospitals because the capacity was not available to test people entering care homes from the community as well at that point. And the spokesperson also accused the Telegraph of attacking him to promote the paper's anti-lockdown agenda. But sunlight is the best disinfectant. I am very for this coming out, personally. So let's see what happens.